I'm sure that many of you have traveled abroad before. Maybe you even went on a pilgrimage to a place like Rome or Lourdes or Fatima. Each of these places is really important in its own way. But there's something different about a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. The Holy Land is where it all began. To visit the Holy Land is to walk where Jesus walked, to pray where he prayed, and to visit the tomb from which he rose. This is a qualitatively different experience. And we wanted to show you what this experience can be like. So we created this film of an actual pilgrimage to the Holy Land so that you can experience the land of Jesus through the eyes of actual pilgrims.
When I was 25 years a priest, I took a trip to the Holy Land, and it was a beautiful experience. I felt that people should go there when they were younger, because it forever affects how you read the scriptures. It changes even your prayer in some way.
The scripture that first came to my mind was when you find a treasure, to go and sell everything you have so that you can own that treasure. And I thought of the Holy Land being like a treasure.
Just to be where Jesus was, to be where all those stories that you read about in the Bible happened. I can't imagine a Christian that wouldn't want to go.
When we first arrived, I expected to be exhausted, and it was not that way at all. It was exhilarating. Going to Caesarea, it was just fabulous. I mean, I think everybody was ready to jump right into the experience, and they did that.
And of course you knew you were someplace different. And to think that they dug out this amphitheater, and there it was now, right there on the sea. The Mediterranean Sea, the sea we hear so much about in biblical times.
This is where St. Paul left from this port to bring the gospel. He left in chains to bring the gospel to Rome. And just here, you're here. And now we go in the footsteps of Jesus.
Joe Farris pointed out to me today, with some of you were going up Mount Carmel, he said, in the guidebook, we were told that is the gentle, peaceful place where you can meet God. And that's what's so important. And that's so important. We're going to have like a lot of bustle about this pilgrimage. We're going to be moving about. We're going to, so many things are going to be going on. We're going to see wonderful things, great meals. We're going to have a lot of fun. But part of the pilgrimage is to encounter our Lord in a very special way. And you have to find that quiet time amidst all this. It's a pilgrimage to God.
When we got to the hotel, it was dark, and you could see the water, but you couldn't really see what it was like. And to get up the next morning and look out, and there's the Sea of Galilee, and you can see across to the mountains.
And the wind was blowing, and the waves were there, and I remember just standing out there thinking, this is exactly what Jesus saw. This is exactly where he stood. So for me, that was, I'm here. I was ready.
Dear God, we begin this day in your presence, and as we've already told you how much we love you, we've already thanked you for this day, but we ask you to bless each one. Help us to reach out to all the different people here and to share ourselves with them, to love them, and you, Lord, be present to them. All the married couples, we ask you to bless them, to bless their marriages, to today as they renew their vows, to bring them closer to you.
To be where Jesus performed his first miracle at the wedding of Cana, and to be there with my husband. We've been married 20 years when we went. It was the year of our 20th anniversary. To renew our vows there was really special.
My wife and I have traveled more than most, I presume, and always traveling and sharing experiences brings you closer together. But this was a little different, no question about it. This ability to share that experience, and because it was not only a visual thing, a historic place, it was a place that had great spiritual significance. So I think to grow together spiritually and in every other way was really, really important to us and meant a lot.
ask ourselves, what are we to take home with us from this visit to Nazareth? What is the gift that Mary herself would like to give to you and to me as we come and visit her house? And I think the gift from her home is one word. It's yes. Remember Jesus, her son, said, be yes or no. There's nothing in between. It's either yes or no. And Mary's gift to us is to say yes. She said yes in this very place. She encourages you and me to say yes to the Holy Spirit. Yes to God's plan for you. Yes to God's way. Yes to God's change of plans for you. Yes to your future.
The Jordan River was a really important day, just to be where Jesus was baptized, and that we were able to have our baptismal vows renewed. And it's just really, it's so hard to explain, being in these holy places that Jesus actually stood.
And you think about it all the time, every site that you go to. I did. I thought, this is where our Lord walked and ate and spent time with his disciples.
There were a lot of powerful moments. Many had to do with Scripture. Some of the most powerful moments were being a community, were to being a church, a parish, that you saw a certain spirituality in the people that was so beautiful.
Everywhere we went, I tried to find the scriptural story. Our guide, who was so amazing at quoting the scriptures and telling us where, so I'd sit there and write them down, then I would try to go and actually read the word when I was at the place. To me, the whole idea of the scriptures changes. The whole idea of what I'm looking for and but also what I get back from the scriptures has changed. And I think, when I breathed that air, standing on the Mount of Beatitudes, it was so powerful to realize that I had stood right there. And I'd looked out as he looked out over the Sea of Galilee.
That was a beautiful experience, going down to the seashore and realizing it was right in this spot that the Lord walked. I always think of the seashore as sand. All of a sudden, you have those little black pebbles. And so now when you read the scriptures, you get a whole different image, and you could look out and you could see fishermen. You could see the little boats.
To sit there on the rock and look out at the Sea of Galilee where so much took place, that this, like I said, it was more important to me to see what Jesus saw. So to look out and say, this is exactly what he saw. This is when I felt like I was closest to the Lord.
When we went to the site out onto the Sea of Galilee, a simple wooden boat, like similar to what the disciples would have been on. When we got to the site, it's pouring, it's raining. It's a little cloudy that day anyway, and so it starts to pour, and I'm thinking, this is not going to be good. It's pouring, and we're going to get on this boat, and about 2 minutes before we were to get on the boat, it stops, clears up. It's still overcast, but it's not raining. So peaceful.
There was a lot of silence, but there was like this, it was almost mystical. I mean, there were certain sections of the times our Lord was on the Sea of Galilee that were read from the scriptures.
The boat filled with his disciples was caught in a violent storm. In the middle of the night, they caught sight of him walking on the water, and they thought he was a ghost. And they were really scared and started screaming. Jesus told them to calm down. "It is I, be not afraid."
And it was just dead silence. Maybe you heard a bird, or you heard the boat rocking, or the waves hitting the side of the boat. You just had a sense that you were really in God's presence.
I remember turning around on the chair and just looking as Father Justin read the story of Peter, and Peter stepping out of the boat. And then I think the celebration afterward was probably a lot what the early disciples would have done when Jesus did some of the stuff he did on that same sea.
And then the music starts. And here is Brother Angelo, who can barely walk. I mean, he has whatever, the kyphosis, so bad. But when that music started, I could just see him starting to sway a little bit. And I said, well, Brother Angelo, are you going to dance? Oh no, I can't do that. And he got up there and that music was going, and all of a sudden the Spirit took hold of him and he was just somewhere else. I mean, he was with the Spirit, and to watch him dance, and it stopped everybody.
I just remember looking up and seeing all of a sudden he's standing in the vow with his arms just raised to God, just dancing, just to see him so free and joyful, just dancing just for God. It wasn't for us. You know, it was like it was just he and God in that moment, but we all got to see it.
He had his whole spirit in that dance, and I think it just moved us all that he could give himself so totally to it. He wasn't doing it to entertain us. He wasn't doing it to get our attention, or he was doing it for himself. And I think it was a prayer. And I think that's what really caught everybody.
When we talk about joy, I think Brother Angelo lives that day to day, moment to moment, and brought that to this trip, but in a sense that maybe I needed to see, maybe God wanted me to experience.
And then to go into the excavated city of Capernaum and to say, this is the temple into which Jesus came.
One level on top, you go inside, you'll set foot in the same area where Jesus' feet trotted, you know, and where he preached in the synagogue and where he healed many people. You will be in the actual spot. And this one with white limestone is a synagogue which was built in the late 4th century AD, built on the remains of the synagogue from the time of Jesus. You'll be maybe one level on top, but it's the same spot.
This is where the centurion came and asked Jesus to heal his child. And we were standing in those very places, and it affects you forever.
And we know he preached there, and we know that's the place where he preached. I remember sitting in that synagogue praying and was just overwhelmed by love, and the love that only God himself can give to us. And any time I hear now him preaching in the synagogues and Mass, I think, I know what that felt like, I know what it looked like.
It is something that you just cannot understand until you've been there, how much it brings it to life. And once it brings it to life, then it brings your whole faith to life.
If you had to say what was the most fun, and I will say it was going down in the lobby of the hotels in the evening and being with people. And I think we were all just enjoying each other's company. And you know, we had our drinks and that was fun. But I feel like I look forward to that lobby time every evening, is coming back and being community together.
For me, the trip was originally about solely spiritual things. And then the boat ride, I think, for me, became a chance to really let loose a little bit and to realize that you can't go to the Holy Land and not see that Jesus must have had a lot of fun and eaten a lot of good food and had a lot of good music. Every meal was one more chance to build a community and to laugh and to eat the food the excellent food. You know, I like the food, so.
It's such a building of community between yourself and all the people that are on your pilgrimage, as well as that worldwide community. It's fun to be with people that you're getting to know, have great meals in the evening, just relax over a glass of wine and enjoy relating what you each got out of the day. It's not just visit this site, visit that site, have Mass. Also, it's fun.
That was just a really, really fun time. You know, people that were just outside of our group were eating dinner there that night and just sort of joined in with the dancing and just had a really great time.
You laughed until you hurt at times, but you also were given the chance just to lay back and be community. So I loved it. And that idea of community, I think, is what we all seek after. I think I was more nervous about going to Jerusalem from Galilee in that area, just because I'd heard how busy it might be or how wild the streets would be in the old city, especially because it's a little smaller and the narrower. I felt completely safe in a way that I hadn't felt often here.
It is the place that you say, this is where history took place. This is where Christian history, world history, has had such a huge, huge part in everybody's life.
Everywhere you went, you felt something. But when we walked down to the western wall of the temple, something did come over me, just to think this, not only is it still so significant to the Jewish people, but I felt that's the presence of God. That's where God, you know, the Ark of the Covenant was. That's where Christ was.
Nothing, I don't think, will ever take away, or it could take away, the moments, the feelings that I had, you know, in each of those places. And the Church of the Nativity was one of those. To be in that spot, to be in that place.
I remember going down and we waited for hours, and it would seem like hours, and I think probably just minutes, because I think I was so excited to get down there. And then when they opened it up, and the hole was so much smaller to get down in there, and I was kind of crawling through. And there was a time where they would allow you to put your hand in the exact spot where we think that Jesus Christ of Nazareth was born. And I remember my hand was shaking, but I wanted to touch, but then I was scared. And I remember touching, and it was just, for me, it was one of the most powerful things I've ever felt. But you go from the Church of the Nativity to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and you've really been given the opportunity to experience everything in the life of Jesus.
I hope more than anything during these days of pilgrimage that's what we realize. That we come here and we look at Jesus in so many facets of his life, from the infant to the cross to the resurrection. This is a Jesus that loves you and me so very much. We don't have to prove ourselves to him. We don't have to have a perfect record. We don't go before him and say, look at how I have everything in order. We come before him and say, look at all my loose ends. Look at how much I need you. Look at my heart, but know that in my heart I love you. And I am so grateful for that love.
You do know in your head that you're going to be where Jesus was and where he grew up and had his ministry. But when you're actually there, there's head knowledge and there's heart knowledge. And so you feel it a little more strongly than you anticipated, because it went from your head to your heart.
When we went to the Garden of Gethsemane, right there where the rock was, where he agonized that night before he died. Wow, and to spend an hour there with just our community, that was powerful.
I think when you walk in the footsteps of another person, you really begin to take on some of what they took on, and you also begin to be more open. I was given the opportunity in the Garden of Gethsemane to really stand still in his footsteps and really just feel exactly what he felt. For me, I'd never had an experience of prayer like that.
We were all around the altar, and the rock was embedded into right there by the altar. And then you could get up and walk around or go to reconciliation. But I found myself, I was just rooted there. I couldn't move. I wanted to stay close to the rock, close to the Blessed Sacrament, and stay there just like Jesus did in prayer.
It was the culmination of what I'd been looking for. I remember going outside and we walked through the olive trees, some of us did, and we looked up at the city lit at night. And I remember feeling a sense of peace that I had not had in a long time in my life. I really just came to know God in a way I'd never known him before.
One of the most beautiful experiences we had was the morning we got up real early to do the Way of the Cross. It was a Friday morning, I think. And we were there as people were just getting some of the windows in the streets. People were opening the windows and the shutters. And we're there singing, "May the Passion of Jesus Christ be always in our hearts." And we're carrying that big cross.
You probably get about as authentic an experience of what Jesus must have felt. Like, it's busy, there are people trying to sell you stuff, you're walking through crowded streets, you're bumping into people. But I think it's also placed perfectly in that trip. Because the first day of the trip you might not know everybody, the last day you're a community, and you notice how close you walk and how tight you kind of made your way through the streets.
And you could almost picture Mary as you'd see the cross bobbing along, and that maybe out of one of these streets it's where Mary came to embrace her son. It's beautiful, and it has really deeply touched my people's heart. They bring it up to me all the time.
You know, the presence of God was just incredible. His presence was incredible everywhere, but I felt him there the most.
They've been coming for centuries. All these millions of pilgrims have gone there. And you kneel in the place where saints and all sorts of people have knelt, and you reach down and you touch the rock where the most important event in history took place. That from there, Jesus' arms reached out to the whole world to redeem the world, and you were standing there, kneeling there, praying there.
Before, it was someplace distant. I guess it existed. I guess these things really happened in this place. But now, every time I mention the places we've been, or the places close to where we've been, I can say, I can see it, I can visualize it, I can experience it, I feel it.
From touching the spot where Jesus was born, to touching the spot where he was crucified, to standing in the empty tomb, the presence of God is so rich in that land. You feel almost like you can touch him everywhere you go. I think I came out here, we all came out here for different reasons. I know I came by the grace of God and the gift of many holy people in my life, looking for peace and looking for answers, maybe not even biblical answers, but just to be in the presence of God. And I was thinking about that mountain we went up to accidentally, where Jesus' family was taking him up to toss him off. And then from there, in the garden the other night, I just found a real deep sense of peace and maybe an understanding that I've been searching for. So for me, the walk was powerful and life-altering, if not life-changing.
I think for me, as Father Peter said, God calls us to take up our cross every day, and the picture for me of the friends he sends to help us with that, just like on the Via Dolorosa, when we didn't carry the cross alone. I just thank him for all of you being my friends on the journey, and I will remember it, and you will spiritually, mentally help me carry that cross every day.
My favorite time was the Church of the Annunciation. Brian and I were married on the Feast of the Annunciation, and we actually said our first rosary together at the Church of the Annunciation, and that was so special for me. Thank you.
Through the years, the Lord has shown me how much he loves me, and he just wants me to trust him. And this experience here is just, it's met more than my expectations. And I never realized how much God loves all of us, individually, and caring for us. And he's so pleased that we're all here for his greater honor and glory, and to be with him in heaven, eternity. The fear is leaving me more and more and more, and I just thank God for that. And it's become less and less. It becomes more and more looking forward. Someday, I believe, I will be in heaven for all you people.
You will remember this your entire life. It will affect how you meditate, how you read the scriptures. It will have a lasting influence for the good in your life.
There's something about never knowing somebody well until maybe you've been to their home with them. That is where you really get to know somebody from their roots. And perhaps I think now my relationship with Jesus is such that I know where you come from.
I've had a few conversations since I've returned of people who are kind of unsure of whether they want to go to the Holy Land, or asking me my thoughts on going to the Holy Land. And I've told them repeatedly, to me, there's not a safer place you're going to visit, not a holier place you're going to visit in the world.
I think I'll never read or hear the Bible the same again, because so many stories in the Gospels, you have seen where it is. And so the whole Bible, all the Gospels to me are more personal now.
How I just will feel so blessed to be able to have that the rest of my life. You know, each one of those moments, I don't think that I'll ever forget.
So often when I will read certain scriptures now at the end of Mass, and the people will say, Father, were you thinking about when we were in Israel? Were you thinking about when we were in Capernaum? When we were in Nazareth? When we were standing in the Jordan River?
As I've looked over what I did, my following and journey with Christ has grown so much that I can't understand why you wouldn't want to go on a trip like that. And why it's almost like they need to convince me why they shouldn't go rather than me convince them why they should go.
I'm gonna count to 3 and everybody shouts, hey, yeah. 1, 2, 3, hey! 1, 2, 3, hey! 1, 2, 3, hey! 1, 2, 3, hey! Guru